moving in herds. They do move in herds. How'd you do this? I'll show you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Registered Nerd Podcast. This is episode 5, and tonight we're going to talk about Jurassic Park. With me is Spark. I'm Snack Packs, and with that, we're going to start off with the first 3. We're probably going to be a two-parter here, depending on how long this takes us. So I'm gonna defer to Spark on his thoughts for Jurassic Park here, because I think he's a bigger fan of it than I am.
I love Jurassic Park. I love dinosaurs. I always have. They were my absolute favorite thing as a kid. And I think, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Jurassic Park was rated R, correct? The first one. I don't think it was PG-13. And I think that was the first R-rated movie I was ever allowed to see. I was a pretty young kid, but I was just so into dinosaurs that my parents had to take me to see it. And
You say you mean the original Jurassic Park?
The original. I think it was rated R.
Don't know. Let me see.
Yeah, but that movie.
I've got the. Let me see. I have the. Got the Blu-rays right over here.
Okay. Well, we talked about with Star Wars and how that movie, from a special effects point of view, kind of blew everybody's mind in a way that's just not possible anymore. And I think Jurassic Park was one of the last summer blockbusters to kind of do the same thing. Like, it when you were watching that movie and you were enthralled in it and you saw that Tyrannosaurus or that Brachiosaurus for the first time, you were really, your brain really believed that was a living, breathing dinosaur. I mean, that movie, it used a great combination of CGI and practical effects. And even when they were doing CGI, they were building models and they were doing lighting and shadow studies on the models to kind of check and see, like, okay, when we render this, how is light going to hit this creature in this environment? And that's why that CGI, most of it really stands up today. I don't think many people would watch the first Jurassic Park and say, oh, that looks hokey, that looks fake. They just did an excellent job on effects. But from a story point of view, it's based on a Michael Crichton novel. And Snacks, have you read any Michael Crichton?
I have. I've read just a couple of his, but I did read Jurassic Park.
Okay. I've actually read a lot of his stuff. Not much recently, but he has this recurring theme in his novels where it's kind of like small people trying to build this like perfect kind of foolproof system, and small errors systemically causing big errors. And basically, if you had to take one like overall lesson from all of his novels, it would be like, there's going to be problems and you're going to have to overcome them, so don't assume that you can create anything that isn't going to have issues. And I think in a lot of ways Jurassic Park is the perfect, it's like the culmination of that idea. It's like the ultimate, because he obviously structures the novel. The entire novel is kind of structured around chaos theory, and each chapter kind of has this graphical representation before you start reading the chapter of a complex system and how patterns arise in the complex system, and then how eventually it breaks down, and then how eventually it finds equilibrium again. And that's obviously a metaphor for what happens in the books. I think sometimes he was kind of a master of that. I think other people have tried to pull off the same thing, and I think they've come up with stupid reasons why a system breaks down. But I think one of the great things about Michael Crichton, and then what Steven Spielberg obviously did with the film, was it's plausible. You kind of see like, okay, because what are the reasons that the system breaks down in Jurassic Park?
You mean in the movie or the book?
In the movie. We can talk about the movie.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, one of the biggest contributions is probably Nedry, but
Yeah, it's and it's not just, and Nedry isn't an evil guy. And I guess I will pull a little bit from the book because there is some backstory, but they do a pretty good job of covering it in the film. Nedry has money problems. Okay, so that's a small problem. You have this massive multi-billion-dollar park, and you have one employee that has money problems, and because of that, he's vulnerable to become a worker for this other company for a case of corporate espionage. And and he tries to set it up where no one's going to get hurt. It's going to be a quick in and out, and because of he gets lost on the road in the book I think he has the same issue, but in the movie he gets lost on the road, and then he was gonna go back. His plan was he was gonna drop the samples off at the dock, and then he was gonna go back and reset everything up, and everybody would be fine. The security would be down for, I think it was 15 minutes was his plan. And instead, he's dead out in the jungle somewhere. Spoiler alert, Dennis Nedry dies. And because of that, they don't even know that, it takes them a while to figure out that there is a problem, what the problem is, and it takes them even longer to solve it. And
right.
there are other systemic problems which are talked about a little bit more in the book. One of the big ones is that they cheaped out on their dock. And because they cheaped out on their dock, the boat could not stay very long because the waves were getting so bad it was going to destroy the boat and the dock. And that's the reason why the captain was pressuring Nedry, because the captain was in on it too, or one of the deckhands, I'm not exactly sure. So you have these little problems like, oh, we don't have a very good dock, and it causes this problem later. But in the novel, they think they get everything set up and they think they're back online. Like,
they were running on auxiliary power.
Yep.
They didn't realize it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for hours and hours and hours. And the problem was when they were on auxiliary, I think it was none of the main fences came on because auxiliary can't run the main fences, or it was something like that. But there's it's hard when you've read the book to not, because to me it's all kind of one blended story because they're very similar. There's more that happens in the book. Spielberg didn't put everything in the book into the movie, obviously.
Well, there was that whole thing with the frog DNA. Changing the sex of and I can't remember. I think they touched on that a little bit in the book.
It is that is in the book,
like
yeah.
It's like one of the big things in the movie because I really like the scene in the book where they're showing them how they use like the motion tracking to track the number of copies on the island, and they're like, see, we have the set amount of copies. There's no chance one of them got off the island. So then they search, and he's like, well, that's because your search parameters are always looking for what was it, like 43?
The number you expect.
The number you expect. And then he tells them to search for like 50, and it finds 50. And he's like, all right, search for 80, and it finds like 81. And he's like, how's that even possible?
Yeah, they find out that there were like 5 or 6 species on their species list that had more than they were expecting. And then Grant was actually the one to figure out that he kind of cross-checked all their DNA, and he realized those were the species that they were using frog DNA with. So those were the species that had the possibility for one of the females, one of the dominant females, to become male in an environment where there were no females. That's a great part of the book, and I wish it was in the movie.
Yeah. The movie.
which is also great. I mean, this is not, we're definitely not disparaging the movie. It's to this day one of my favorite films. It's story-wise, it's pretty simple, I think. They have just from a plot synopsis, they have another worker die on the island. They've had multiples. That's the we're thinking of the same thing.
Yes, we are. For anyone who hasn't watched it, the riff tracks for Jurassic Park is amazing.
those are the guys, Riff Tracks, those are the guys from Mystery Science Theater 3000. And they do these just commentary tracks that you can buy and watch over a movie. And the Jurassic Park one is one of their best. And it's that scene at the beginning where they're loading the raptor from her portable cage into her main cage. And the raptor, the gate guard comes down and she hits the end of the container that she's in, and it pushes it away from the wall, which gives her, he falls down between the container and the gate, and she grabs him and pulls him into her cage and starts eating him. And Muldoon has him, and is trying to hold him. And what is it they say? It's like, and now the question, do we hire one gate repairman or an 11th gate master or something like that? It was an interesting, I think it's kind of a weird opening scene to the movie, but
yeah,
it does introduce you to the fact that, like, there's a lot of danger on this island, and maybe they don't have it as under control as you would expect them to.
Yeah. But I mean, the scene in the book wasn't really. I mean, it kind of showed you that there was dangers. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Yeah, I don't actually remember that particular scene from the novel.
There's this there was this doctor who's like doing like this Doctors Without Borders thing, and then she gets this call, and this person gets airlifted from the island to her lab or whatever, and she's like, what did this? And they were like, and the one guy's like, it was a demon or whatever, and she's like, what the fuck? Because she's like looking at like the slash marks and the bite marks and stuff, and she doesn't think that anything like she knows of could do some damage like that.
I remember that now. She was also investigating, or someone was investigating the infants that were being killed, because some of the compies or troodons or whatever small dinosaur they had had got to the mainland in Costa Rica, and it killed a baby in its bassinet at a hospital.
Right.
You could never put that scene in a movie because it was pretty. Now that I think about it, it was pretty gory when they were describing, like, it had eaten the baby's face while the baby was alive. Wow, so that's a downer. It's wow.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Welcome to we spared no expense. But yeah, so the movie opens with that, and then obviously you have the great scene with Alan Grant where he's in the desert, and computers were kind of new because I think Jurassic Park came out in 93, right? So
it was 93 or 94, I think.
Yeah, not many people had like personal computers, and people were just kind of learning, like everyday people were kind of learning what computers were capable of, and in a kind of everyday manner. And there's that great scene where they're using the ground radar to kind of find fossils and stuff, and Grant has that moment where he touches it in the screen, and you're kind of learning, like, okay, this guy does not trust, like, or get along with technology, and he's going to be at this place that, we can run this entire park with like 3 people because there's all this automation and stuff. And it's just setting up some nice moments with him where, he has to interact not just with the dinosaurs and not just with kids who he doesn't really get along with, but also with technology. There's also the great scene with the boy or girl, we're still not sure, at the dig site where, the kid kind of disparages the raptor and calls it a big turkey, which honestly, with Velociraptor, that kid was not wrong. Velociraptor was about the size of a medium turkey. But obviously, this is one of the Hollywood magic things, is the actual Velociraptor. Velociraptor is such a cool name. It's like, come on, you're not going to come up with a better name.
Right.
And Deinonychus is not. Deinonychus is kind of bizarre, but really the Velociraptors in that movie are more like Deinonychus or maybe Utah Raptor, where they're man-sized animals instead of turkey or dog-sized animals. And
right.
But I'm okay with that. I'm like, and you could always, the great thing about the new movies is it kind of retcons something where you can now look back at the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park and say, oh, they're not what we know dinosaurs to be like. But, Wu has that line of, we were always creating these things to be maybe what people expected, not what they were actually like.
Yeah, I know that line from the first Jurassic World. It's like, you guys are making fun of it now, so
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. It's a little self-aware, and it's like, you know, Dr. Wu says if we made them what they were actually like, you know, people would like them less, which I'm not sure, but it does retcon, I think, in a fairly decent way why the dinosaurs were, you know, why the Velociraptor weighed 200 pounds and was 6 feet tall, and why the Dilophosaurus had a crazy frill around its neck and all of these things. I mean, and there could also be, I mean, obviously we don't know everything about these dinosaurs. We know a lot more than we did in the 90s, though. But even in the 90s, they did a lot of things wrong that they knew were correct, but they did a lot right. So, you know, at least the Tyrannosaurus isn't standing up in that kangaroo pose on his tail, you know, like those old classic reconstructions that we've known have been incorrect for decades and decades. They at least got that stuff right. But plot wise, there, I love Ian Malcolm's introduction
oh, you mean on the
on the helicopter. Yeah. There's another great Riff Tracks moment of that where it's like, you do it, Bryce.
I can't even. I just remember from the riff tracks. It's like, that's an amazing Jeff Goldblum impression.
You do an amazing Jeff Goldblum. Yeah. Yeah. But they get to the island. The helicopter lands for 45 minutes, and then we're introduced to the Brachiosaurus. And it's that classic line, everybody, or it's not even so much a line. I mean, it's "Welcome to Jurassic Park," and then the music plays, which is great. That's so Spielberg-esque. I mean, he's setting up this huge moment, and he pulls it off perfectly. Because Grant, you know, the way he pulls off his glasses and he turns her head to look at the dinosaur, because Ellie is kind of focused on the plant, which they never understand. Like, they never explain how they got plant DNA, but I guess that's not important. But he turns her head, and there's this brachiosaur, and it's just this magical moment, and it's the first time I think ever that you saw dinosaurs on the big screen that they looked like living, breathing animals. You know, before that they always looked like stop motion claymation.
Right. I'm sure that they went into how they cloned the plants. But see, the thing is all those rude bitches didn't stick around for the ride for Mr. DNA to explain it.
I know, we missed out on that because they just got up and went into the labs. I never liked how they retconned that in Jurassic World, and maybe even how I guess it kind of makes sense where it's like, okay, we really make the dinosaurs at this other island, and then we bring them over to this island. I mean, it gets them another island to play around in the books and in the movies, but I kind of like the idea of like this is where the real science is happening, but yeah, they kind of do away with that in Jurassic Park Lost World, where they're like, oh no, there was Site B, and that's where all the actual science was happening.
Right.
But which leads, this is the last time we're gonna mention Riff Tracks, but it's the great line where she's like, it's turning the eggs. It's like, why is that special?
That's the coffee machine.
I love that. It's like, that is one fancy coffee machine.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like that's where Grant kind of has the first moment of, you know, he realizes he's holding a baby Velociraptor, and he's spent a big chunk of his career studying the Velociraptor, and he realizes like, oh, maybe this isn't such a great idea. Now, I do not, the movie starts to get into an idea when they're in the conference room and they're all starting to talk about you know, what this is before they go on the tour, and they're doing their initial like talk about, okay, we brought the mathematician, we brought that still confuses me as an adult. I understand chaos theory and everything, but yeah, we want to see if this park's going to work, so we brought a mathematician. Okay. But the paleontologists kind of made more sense to me, and maybe they should have brought some people that were experts in, like, you know, zoos and stuff, but maybe they thought they had that.
Well, that's what's his name was. The game
Muldoon. Yeah, Muldoon
yeah.
was that, but I mean, he wasn't an outside contractor at that point. I mean, he had a vested interest in saying that the park was going to work. Although he was kind of in the movie, he kind of said about the raptors, you know, they should all be destroyed. But
right. There's
one part that I really don't like in the movie, I think less. I think in the book it's fine, but in the movie where they're kind of talking about the idea that we're playing God, and I don't subscribe to that. I think there's things that we shouldn't do from a science point of view, but I don't like the idea of playing God because you're not everybody believes in God, and this is hard to explain, but there's this idea of like evolutionary, like predestination or determinism, where Malcolm says, evolution selected them for extinction. Well, he's anthropomorphizing evolution. Evolution doesn't have a goal. It doesn't have an idea, an end state. It's just some animals survive and some animals don't. And it seems like it took, if you know anything about the extinction event that knocked out the dinosaurs, it took a couple major 1-2 punches to knock the dinosaurs out. And it didn't just knock out the dinosaurs. It knocked out the other archosaurs, like the pterosaurs, the flying reptiles. It eventually knocked out all of the marine reptiles. And that idea always really bothered me, where they're like, it's like, on the one hand, you're just subscribing a thought process to something that doesn't have a thought process. And we do have a thought process. So if we bring it back, it's almost like Malcolm kind of puts this idea out that we're sinning. I don't know if that's what they were going for, or if it's just he thinks it might be a bad idea because we don't know what the consequences are going to be. But yeah, that scene always kind of bothered me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have any issue with that scene at all. It just kind of goes to show that, like, everybody kind of voicing their concerns with the park.
Yeah, I guess I should rephrase it, is I don't have a problem with the scene from like a movie point of view. I just have a problem with like Malcolm's idea and kind of how he looks at it. Like, it's one thing to say,
basically,
like,
you're saying that he's giving evolution like a
traits it doesn't have.
Traits it doesn't have. I see what you're saying, but I think he's more just summarizing the fact that this is how evolution played out.
Right.
And they had their shot, and now they're gone, and we don't need to be bringing them back now.
Yeah. Well, and I do think I am perfectly okay with the idea that he kind of, and Grant kind of chimes in on this too, is, we probably don't know as much about these creatures as we think we do. So if we don't have the knowledge, like if we don't know what we don't know, how can we control them? Which,
right.
I kind of still come down on the side where if you have enough moats and concrete walls and electric fences and enough redundancy, you probably could control them just fine. But also right. in my Jurassic Park, I probably wouldn't have bred these perfect killing machine raptors either. I probably... It's like, okay, we can have the big T-Rex that we can track and it's perfectly fine, but maybe not these, little small agile predators that we can lose track of and they're ambush hunters. Like, that's not a good idea for anyone until maybe down the road when we get it figured out a little better. But yeah, overall I would say it's a good scene. I just never liked that one part about it. And then we're introduced to the kid. So the weird thing about Jurassic Park in general, and I'm talking about the whole series, and they finally, I think they broke the cycle in Jurassic World Evolution. In the first 4 Jurassic Park movies, there was a divorced parent subplot. Did you ever think about that?
Oh, yeah. There's always a divorced parent subplot.
There's always a divorced parent subplot, and I don't know why, and I laughed when we saw Jurassic World and they did it again. I was like, really? They're doing this again? Like, there's no reason for these kids' parents to be getting divorced. They're just doing it because it was happening in the other movies.
Well, I think that it happens in Jurassic Park 3 just because they don't want it to be too different from Jurassic Park.
Right.
That to me was like, you got to keep it as close to Jurassic Park as you can.
Yeah. I mean, Jurassic World was the same thing. Jurassic World was just a straight reboot, but we'll get there. But yeah. But then you have, like, skipping a little bit ahead, you have that well, I don't want to get too far ahead. So he has the scene where he meets the kids and, he's already talked about how uncomfortable he is with children. But this kid is just like, oh, this guy's my hero. And they're kind of forced together. And that gives Grant a really nice arc where by the end of the movie, you know, with the first part of the movie, he's so uncomfortable with these children, and then at the end of the movie, they're in the helicopter, and he's gone through all this stuff with them, and they're kind of like sleeping, laying on him, and you can see that he's kind of changed his opinion on children and stuff, and he's kind of developed that caring aspect of his personality that maybe he didn't have at the start.
Yeah.
Which I thought was nice. He has a really nice arc. They used to give characters arcs in movies, and they weren't the same person at the end. Like, it was almost like the events of the movie changed them, you know? That's not very popular now.
Are you listening, Ryan?
Ryan Johnson. I mean, you could say Ryan Johnson changed Luke, but he didn't do it in the form of an arc. It was just when we met Luke, he was a psychopath. But
no, I'm referring to all of the main characters of the movie.
Oh yeah, they don't.
Face it, you know, Luke's not the main character of that movie.
Well, when you have a movie that takes place over the course of like a day and a half, you know, you don't have any time. Although I guess Jurassic Park only takes place over a couple of days, but Steven Spielberg is a good director, so that might be the difference. So after the car scene, you know, they're driving along, and eventually we get the second great visual scene in the movie, and that's when we're introduced to that Tyrannosaurus. And
God, I love that scene.
Yeah, just, you know, sitting there, and especially once he realizes the fence, or I should say, once she realizes the fence is down and she comes through, and like that whole sequence is almost perfect. I mean, you feel so much tension when it's, you know, it comes down and it just looks inside the car and the kids are panicked, you know. Yeah, that was it's because it's such a visual scene, it's hard to talk about, but it's like wow, that scene, I can watch that scene over and over again to this day. Like, that's when I watch the movie, that's one of the things that I watch it for, is just how well that's directed. But yeah, like Jurassic Park is full of those moments, like, you know, those memorable moments when they're in the tree and like the brachiosaur, and they're feeding the brachiosaur and it sneezes on the little girl.
The scene with the Tyrannosaur paddock, I think I told you about this. I was listening to just one of Mahler's videos, and he was talking about there's an inconsistency in that scene where, like, okay, so the Tyrannosaur breaks through the fence, and comes out, and then the next scene, she knocks the car over the side,
and it's a giant trench.
This gigantic trench, and you're like, huh? Like, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense, but like, you're so invested in what's going on that it doesn't really.
I know. I noticed that stuff a lot in movies, and I didn't notice that the first couple times I watched Jurassic Park. Eventually, I kind of thought about it, but yeah, you're right. That scene is so good that you don't really care. Now, in the book, she threw their car into a tree. That's why they were up high, because she literally picked up one of the SUVs that they were in and chucked it. Mm-hmm. For some reason, I don't know if they just couldn't. That might have been really difficult to pull off with the technology that they were doing, because I don't know. Like, I'm guessing that was just how the hell are we going to shoot this? How are we going to have her completely lifted off the ground and throw it and have it not look terrible? So we'll just have her push it over the edge and it'll land in a tree, and like. They still get the tree scene, which is great, where he's having to climb down. Yeah, there's a lot in Jurassic Park. We kind of talked about the overall, like, point of the movies. And I mean, the rest of the movie kind of just becomes, okay, Grant needs to get the kids to safety. The other characters need to get the park online. There's the part that always confused me with Muldoon. I don't remember. Does Muldoon die in the books?
Shit, I don't think so.
I don't think he dies in the books, and it's kind of weird in the movie that he does, because he gets ambushed in a way that he talks to Grant about how they're ambush predators. At least in the books, he has a really long conversation with how they hunt, and it always surprised me. I was like, oh, the one guy that knows the most about these animals and how they hunt, like, they actually surprised him, which it's supposed to show, like, how high of a threat they are. Like, oh, we have this badass African game hunter and he knows about these animals, and they were still able to trick him. But in the book, spoiler alert, there's going to be some spoilers for the book. The creator of the park, whose name I'm blanking on. Why am I blanking on his name? the old man.
Oh, you're talking about fuck. Now I've
What is happening to us? Do I have early onset Alzheimer's?
I don't know.
Um,
Oh my god, I'm drawing a blank here.
well, anyway, the old man with the stick with the amber in it. He is
Hammond.
Hammond. Thank you, John Hammond. Yes, as soon as you said Hammond. Wow, that was special.
I know.
He dies in the. He's very strange in the novels. In the novels, they kind of paint him. It's not that he has malice, but he's just so, like, oh, we're gonna fix it. When we do it again, we're gonna fix it. He's a little bit that way in the. He's a little bit in denial in the movie, but he is really in denial in the books. And in the books, he falls down a hill and like injures his ankles, and the compies get him, and the compies eat him alive, which is kind of a terrible way to die. But I guess I don't know. I don't know if that was Michael Crichton just being like, well, this is his comeuppance for causing all of this. Dennis Nedry's death in the books is really, really graphic because he is also alive when the dinosaurs start to eat him. Like, he feels like his intestines out on the ground, and he's blinded. And the last part of his chapter is he just wanted it to be over, or it's some line like that. Like, he just basically, like, he was in so much agony, like he's waiting for them to the dinosaurs to finally finish it. But yeah, is there anything else about the first one that you want to talk about?
I know you talked about that one scene where they're, having dinner and stuff that you aren't crazy about. The one thing I don't like about the movie is what they did with Samuel L. Jackson's character with the arm. That was so hokey.
That was edited. They edited out his death scene.
Okay.
And
I didn't know that. So.
Yeah, I don't remember why. I don't know if it was just a time thing. I mean, it's already nowadays they just make movies 4 hours long, but back then they had kind of more restrictive time constraints when they edited a film. And I read something about that, and I don't remember if they edited it for time or if it was for the R rating. Because I think
it was PG-13.
It was PG-13. Okay, so maybe they didn't want to go up to an R rating because I remember he was another one that got tore apart by the raptors. So yeah, I think they filmed some of that and it just didn't make it into the movie.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Like, it just really was really hokey how she like backs up in the thing and all of a sudden his arm just like pops on her shoulder. I was like, oh, okay.
It reminded me of Jaws when he's down in the water. Yeah.
It reminded me of Jaws, and it doesn't have the same effect that Jaws had.
No.
At all.
No, because the scene's not quite as creepy. I mean, she isn't. I agree with you. That was never one of my favorites. I'm trying to think about, like, I mean, we've heaped a lot of praise on the movie. I'm trying to think if there's anything else in retrospect. I mean, no, I think other than that, it's very close to the perfect summer blockbuster. I mean, you have movies like Jaws and Star Wars and Jurassic Park, and
Jaws is probably my favorite Spielberg movie.
Yeah, I probably would go with Jurassic Park, but Jaws is a very close second. It might just be because I like dinosaurs more than sharks, but yeah, Jaws is structurally, Jaws might be a better film, which is surprising because he made it so much earlier.
And there's a lot of hokiness to Jaws too.
Maybe
there's a lot of that in the especially there's like that one scene where they're talking about closing the beaches. And they're like, we're gonna close the beaches for 2 days, and you hear somebody in the back yell, 2 days is like 3 weeks.
Yes, I know, but and that's just all to reinforce the point of, like, they're putting money over people's lives, which is kind of Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park has a lot of the same morals. It's like, Jurassic Park, they're putting money over people's lives. I come from the point of view is, well, some people are just going to die no matter what you do. So it's like, but when there's a giant 25-foot shark that's been repeatedly eating people, maybe close the beaches and until we deal with the shark. That's reasonable to me. And also, with Jurassic Park, I always thought the biggest failing was they just had no staff, and they had less staff because they sent everybody home because of the tropical storm. And so it's like, in the movie you feel like there's 4 people on the island. In the book they talk about, there's a lot more support staff. but for the most part they're like gardeners and cooks and stuff like that. They're not people that are involved in like getting the island back online. They're basically just like sheltering in place.
Right.
So, all right, well, we can talk about the second one.
One other thing I wish they had added in the movie. I know it's like a time constraint thing, but I really would have liked to have seen either the scene in the aviary,
Yeah.
or the scene in the river, where the T-Rex like follows them in the river.
I'm okay with the river scene being out. Number one, that would have been hard to film because you gotta put your
doubt.
model
I
in the
mean,
water.
Yeah,
And
the time constraint and like just the ability to do it, I totally understand. I just think it would have been really cool to have at least one of those scenes.
yeah, well, they gave us the aviary in Jurassic Park 3, which okay, we'll get to Jurassic Park 3, but yeah, those are two of the scenes from the books that they cut that were kind of like, I could take them or leave them. The part with Grant, like Spielberg said when he was talking about adapting the book, he said there's a big part where Grant and the kids, and it's like they have an interaction with the T-Rex and they get away from the T-Rex, and then there's another interaction with the T-Rex and they get away, and it's like the T-Rex is kind of stalking them across the island, and he didn't want the movie to become that, where it was just like, okay, we're waiting for the next interaction with the Tyrannosaur. They do have the really classic one with the Gallimimus herd, where the herd runs past them and the T-Rex eats one, but he's just hunting a prey that's more natural to him. He's not like, oh, I need to kill these people, which is kind of a weird part about the book, where it seems like the dinosaurs almost have more malice against the humans.
Right.
But, well, Jurassic Park 2, The Lost World, also based on a novel, although I would say much less based on the novel than the first movie was.
I have not read the sequel novel.
I recommend it. I love the sequel novel. It's really good. That's where what he deals with in the sequel novel is kind of how evolution, like how animals go extinct, why they go extinct, and one of the big things one of the reasons Malcolm goes to the island in the book is to study how this ecosystem has kind of built up, because he has this theory that behavior can lead to extinction, and pretty mild changes in behavior, which is pretty radical. I mean, people, when they think about extinction events, they think about asteroids or massive climate change. And Malcolm has this idea of, well, what if this one like herd of animals that normally like eats in this area decides, no, it's going to start like being forest dwellers, and then the predator that fed on it in this area dies out, and then that means that this other animal that was being in check by this predator expands more, and then they take more food, which drives another animal to extinction. So he had this theory that like can behavior lead to extinction in animals in a natural environment? And I mean, the book articulates it way better, but I thought that was one of the interesting points. They don't touch on that at all in the movie. Not even once. They don't bring that up. But I think Jurassic Park 2 gets a bad rap. I think it's a perfectly fine movie.
I mean, I don't hate it. I would rather watch that than Jurassic Park 3.
Oh,
I would
well,
rather
of course.
watch that than The Last Jedi.
I think even structurally it makes sense. So, InGen is going to try to recover. They have the Site B. The one thing that I guess they were like, they would raise the dinosaurs up to a certain age over at Site B, and then they'd bring them over to the main park once they were ready, which kind of makes sense, I guess. And when everything fell apart, like the Costa Rican government came in and destroyed the first park. Like they killed all the animals. They've retconned this now, where they're like, oh, the T-Rex in Jurassic World is the T-Rex from the first movie. No, she was killed after the first film. They were saying that about the Brachiosaur too. It's like, no, she was killed. All the animals were killed, because that's what makes sense. But for some reason, like, InGen didn't mention to anybody, like, we have this other island that is also crawling with dinosaurs. And kind of by the time anybody realized, there were dinosaurs everywhere. But I do get that, like, InGen's coming back to recoup their losses. And they're like, okay, we're going to do this a little bit less grand. We're going to build a small park in San Diego where people can it'll be more like a zoo. The animals have their little paddocks and you just walk around and see them. Although the design of it was kind of weird. They had it designed like a coliseum. Like, I guess they were gonna parade the dinosaurs out for people.
Right.
That's bizarre. It's like, all right, Tyrannosaurus versus Apatosaurus, round one, fight. Just, but it makes sense, like she's going there to document, and although I don't know if one person, if that was insane, just send one photographer to the island to take pictures and try to document these animals. Like, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, InGen is there for nefarious purposes. They're there to take the animals back to the mainland, and the movie has kind of this vein of like Greenpeace eco-terrorism, where it's like, no, we're gonna stop them from doing this, and they fail. They don't stop them from doing it. They probably get a couple people killed at the camp when they let all the dinosaurs out. But
yeah,
that,
I mean, I don't know. I think I would say that I don't like how it progresses towards the end, where it's like, the dinosaurs are freed in the city and stuff like that.
that was a good Ian Malcolm you just did, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't trying, but
So you don't like the scene in San Diego?
no, I don't. I don't like any of it. I think that I know that you're like, oh, well, the movie had to get to a certain point here, but I was like, at that point in time, I was like, all right, I've seen enough dinosaurs and enough mayhem. I'm good. Let's end the movie.
Yeah,
Wrap it up.
there is, I would say there is more action in that movie. The scene that's really good is when the T-Rex knocks the buses off the cliff.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty awesome action scene, and she's on the glass, and the glass is breaking. I don't remember her name. That's
the actress or
no,
the
character.
Isn't it Sarah or something?
Sarah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's. I should know that. That's my wife's name. I like Vince Vaughn's character in that movie. I know that's not a popular opinion. I think he plays kind of the aloof, like he's the eco-terrorist, which, okay, whatever. But he does handle stuff fairly well. Like, he does sneak into the camp. Like, their objective was to release the dinosaurs. He does release the dinosaurs. Ultimately, it comes to nothing. They still get some of the dinosaurs back to the mainland. But I don't know. He's kind of, I like Vince Vaughn in general for the most part. Like, I don't know. I thought his character was kind of fun in that movie.
I'm not a fan of Julianne Moore, so maybe that's why I don't care for the movie that much, because I feel like she's not.
And there's a lot of Julianne Moore in that movie. She's okay. I don't love her or hate her. She's fine. Malcolm is fine in it. I think he feels more like a real person in that movie than he does in the first movie. Like, again, with the divorce subplot, he's got this daughter who's black. I never understood that either. Like, she does not look mixed race. I don't know if he maybe married a woman and he adopted her. Like, he's her stepfather and he fully adopted her or what, but they never address it in the movie. How Ian Malcolm, one of the whitest guys ever, has a very black daughter. But she wasn't an obnoxious kid actor. Like, no. Jurassic Park has done an okay job up until the new ones.
No, the only thing that they really people really dig into that movie for is that whole like gymnastics scene where she kicks the Velociraptor. That's really the only where people knock the movie.
And I will say, that is hokey and that is silly that she was able to kill a Velociraptor that way. But I do like the line where he looks at her and goes, "They kicked you off the team." Like, she does all this amazing like bar work and stuff on the pipes and like kills this raptor, and he's like, how did you not make the team? Like, what the heck? The big continuity gap in that movie, and there's a really bad one, is, and people, I think this confuses people, and it's another thing they don't like about the movie, is when the ship comes to shore in San Diego and the entire crew is dead, and the ship just crashes into the dock, and the Tyrannosaur is released. And people are like, well, how did the T-Rex kill everybody on the ship? He didn't. In the book, I don't even know if in the book, what was cut from the movie was the raptors got on the ship It was like the thing from the first Jurassic Park. There's a part in the first Jurassic Park book where the raptors are on they're on the ferry and they're getting to the mainland, and that's why. And Grant knows it, and because the kids see the raptors get on the boat at one point in the book, and he's like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." The kids are like, "Yeah, there's raptors on that boat," because kids' vision, and so it creates kind of this time crunch where they're not just trying to get back; they're trying to get back quickly so they can warn the mainland of like, "Hey, you need to bring the boat back. The boat has raptors on it." Well, they put that into the second movie where the raptors get on the boat that has the Tyrannosaur, and the raptors get out and they kill everyone on the boat, and that's why the boat was unmanned and just like crashed into the dock. But they completely cut all of that explanation from the film, and so if you're just an average movie goer, you're gonna be like, why did this happen? Like, this makes no sense. Like, why is everyone dead on the boat? I normally don't expect continuity gaffes that bad from Spielberg, who also directed the second one. And you know what? I was gonna say, because we can get into the third one, because I don't think there's that much else to say about Lost World, is there?
I really don't know because it's been so long since I've seen Lost World.
As a summer blockbuster, I'd give it like a B minus. Like, it's perfectly acceptable. It's not offensive. It has some really great scenes with the dinosaurs, and it's got some decent lines of dialogue. But
I wasn't bored. I wasn't bored during it, and I thought it was a pretty entertaining movie. And if I'm going to be honest, I think the only Jurassic Park film that I really really enjoy is the first one.
Yeah, I think it's the type of movie where every couple years I go on a Jurassic Park kick, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch the first and second one, and I just kind of watch them back to back. I own the third one. My parents like bought it for me for Christmas years ago as just a little like stocking stuffer. They probably got it for $5, and I think I've only watched that like once or twice because that movie is offensively bad. But well, and we were talking before we started recording this. We were talking about like who directed what movie, and you asked me who directed the third one, and I was like, I don't know, some fucking guy. And I looked him up.
It's the guy who he directed Captain America, Jumanji.
He directed all kinds of movies I like. Yeah, he directed Jumanji and The Rocketeer and Captain America: The First Avenger, and like I kind of like some of this guy's work. I don't care for October Sky. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, like the guy can put together a movie. Like, what the hell happened with Jurassic Park 3? Like, just nobody cared, I think.
Not only that, I'm sure that there was. I have to think that there was some studio meddling with that one.
Yeah, because that is such. Let's get into Jurassic Park 3. Jurassic Park 3 is where the series completely and like some series you have Star Wars and like the first 3 movies are all great. And you have Star Trek where the movies jump around in quality. It kind of like sometimes you hit that magic where you've got the right director and the right script and it's good, and sometimes you don't. Jurassic Park has been on a pretty straight downward decline, which is that's how sequels always used to be. Back in the 60s and 70s, we get to the second movie, third movie, fourth movie, nobody gives a shit anymore, and it's just a cash grab. And Jurassic Park 3 definitely feels like a cash grab. I think it has the most obnoxious characters of any of the films.
Oh yeah, for sure. I remember seeing it in theaters and laughing out loud when he blows into like the vocal cord, vocal cord replica, and like it like gets the velociraptors to like stop, and I'm like, okay, all right.
That's not how that works.
Like, these are supposed to be intelligent creatures, and they're gonna. No, I'm sorry.
Well, maybe the Raptors were doing the same thing you're doing and just being like, what the fuck is that guy doing? Maybe that they were confused more so than like, he's not talking to them, he's just making weird noises.
Maybe like fucking he's sitting there blowing into it. It's like a mating call, and they're kind of like, huh. If he wants to, I'm willing if he is.
Bite down on this stick.
I'm going in dry.
Oh my god. No, I don't even like Grant's character in that movie, and I love Grant's character in the first one, but in that movie he's so he's so whiny, and he just seems like he's gotten too old for this shit, but not in an entertaining way. It's just like he's tired. And the married couple, or I should say the divorced couple, that they got that guy from fucking what is that movie? It takes place in North Dakota. Fargo. You've seen Fargo, right? Fargo is one of my favorite movies ever.
I have not seen Fargo.
Oh, the Coen brothers.
I have it.
You know,
I have it because Paul gave me his copy of it.
You and I are gonna sit down and watch Fargo sometime, and then we'll watch the series, because the series is excellent too, and the series ties back into the movie, at least the first season. I'm like halfway through the second season, but it's the little squirrely guy from Fargo who's like the guy that kind of sets everything in motion, and he's a car salesman, and he's been defrauding people, and he just plays this like little kind of ineffective man, you know, that gets caught up in bigger things. And I guess he kind of plays the same thing in that movie, but he's just such a weasel. And I'm like, we have to deal with him way too often, and then we have to deal with his ex-wife, who's also, she's in the jungle screaming her kid's name. Like, okay, you just flew over all these dinosaurs. You know this is one of the most dangerous places in the world. That's why you're there. And it's like, I get you want to find your son, but are you retarded? Like, you can't just go into the jungle and scream when there's giant super predators everywhere. Like, everybody in that movie was obnoxious. They hire the mercenaries, and you're like, okay, these are like badass mercenaries. Like, this will be interesting. It'll maybe be like a Predator situation where we'll see these guys that are super effective going against dinosaurs, and like maybe the dinosaurs will get the upper hand sometimes, and it'll make the dinosaurs seem that much more threatening. Nope, they didn't go the Predator way. These guys are just morons. Like, they're just absolute idiots. Like, you find out once you get there that they have no idea what they're doing. They're not really the badass like mercenaries that they claim to be.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with that movie. We should look at this one from the opposite way that we looked at the first Jurassic Park. Like, what is good in Jurassic Park 3?
I don't know. I liked how the dinosaurs looked. I thought they looked good.
See, I think they're the worst. They didn't look terrible, but I think they're the worst looking dinosaurs in the trilogy. Personally, I didn't like how they started to do the raptors with these like bright colors on their face, which
I didn't
looked
care for
hokey.
that.
Yeah, and they did it with the brachiosaurs too. There's a scene where, you know, they're going down the river and you see the brachiosaurs, and it kind of pans in on one of them's head, and it has this bright red, and it just looks fake. It's not that the color is wrong. It's like they didn't put the CGI effort into the lighting, and it looks like, you know, we're gonna mascara up these dinosaurs, you know. Okay, I'm gonna go off on a tangent, a paleontology tangent. I'm really into paleontology. Like I said, I like dinosaurs as a kid, and I kind of follow like the new studies and stuff. The big bad villain in Jurassic Park 3 is the Spinosaurus, and
Yeah, I didn't buy that.
well, the Spinosaurus is so wrong in that movie, and they didn't, to be fair, they didn't have all the information when they made that film, but they used to reconstruct Spinosaurus like a T-Rex with a sail on its back, okay? And all the new studies have found Spinosaurus was the only probably primarily aquatic dinosaur that we know of. And it makes sense if you look at everything about this animal. It was massive. It was like 50 feet long. It was longer than a tyrannosaur. It had the long head, which the Spinosaurus head looks like a crocodilian head, and crocodilian heads are, especially ones with the very narrow snouts, and lots of little teeth, are excellent at killing large fish. It had the sail, and the theory that I believe on the sail is for individual identification and sexual selection. Because if you're an animal that's living like a crocodile, like where most of your body is not out of the water, and you're trying to look for other individuals of your species, a large sail that can identify individuals, and is that a female or is that a male? Can I mate with that? Can I not? Should I be scared of that? You know, can I go toward it? That makes perfect sense for what the sail was for. It also had, the reconstruction in the movie is really bad. Its hind legs were barely longer than its front legs. It was not like a tyrannosaur where it stood up on its back legs. This was an animal that was probably when it was out of the water, probably walked on all fours. They actually think it might have been a knuckle walker on its front arms, but it was streamlined. It had small legs. It had all of these it had really dense bones. Most dinosaurs don't have very dense bones, and the Spinosaurus had really dense bones. And that's an aquatic adaptation. It holds you down in the water and keeps you from having to waste effort, sinking. And Spinosaurus is from a North African environment that they think was massive swamps that stretched for like 1,000 miles. And they found fossils of like lungfish that would have been over a ton, and all these other. There were lots of large crocodiles. There were lots of large fish, and that's why the thing got so big, is because it was eating these massive fish. There was just plentiful food supply. That was my tangent about Spinosaurus and how wrong it is in Jurassic Park. And I think it does a disservice to just make it a tyrannosaur with a spine on its back, because it was really a very interesting and unique animal. And now everybody's picture of it is just this dopey looking tyrannosaur. But yep, that was my nerdy rant on Spinosaurus.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. You, kind of went off on a little tangent there. And,
Yeah. It happens. This is why we can't do dinosaur movies very often, because I've got opinions, damn it. But, okay, so let me think about what I liked about Jurassic Park 3. Well, they did finally do your aviary, like you said. They did that scene. It was terrible, but they did it. Jurassic Park seems to think that these flying archosaurs would be attacking human-sized prey, and I don't think they realize that even though these animals look big, they have big wings and big heads, they probably weighed like 20 pounds. So I don't see 20 pound flying predators don't usually go after like a 200-pound man. I guess the closest you could see to that would be like a golden eagle or something. But even golden eagles, they might drive you off, but they're not gonna try to take you down and eat you.
Well, I can't remember the book very well, because there's the scene in the aviary. Doesn't the thing try to pick up one of the kids, and the kid's too heavy?
Yeah. Yep. And now flash forward to the movie, and it's picking up a guy that's like my size. He's probably 6 foot tall. A little shorter than me, and he's 180 pounds, and this thing's lifting him up. We saw the same thing in Jurassic World.
Yeah, there's the part where they're playing catch with the babysitter.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible. We'll talk about that later. But,
oh my god,
that poor woman. But no, in Jurassic World, in all these movies, it's like they're the most aggressive animals, and I don't know why they think like, oh, they're flying and they're scary, so they're going to attack people. It's like, no, these animals would completely ignore us. They would not. It's like not everything in Jurassic Park needs to be a murder machine. You can have some animals just acting like animals.
right.
It's I don't know. I still haven't.
It would have made more sense if, like, I'm gonna cut over to Jurassic World first. What would have made more sense is if like somebody had like a little purse dog,
and it picked that up. That would have been great. That would have made sense, because you're talking about an animal now that weighs a couple pounds, maybe 7 pounds. Yeah, that would be right in its strike zone for an animal that it could eat. But no, it's not going to pick up a full-grown woman. It's definitely not going to pick up a full-grown man and play catch with them. And it's like, it just takes me out of the movie. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to come up with something that I liked in Jurassic Park 3. Nope, I got nothing. I honestly, I can't give the movie any, and I'm trying. I'm really thinking. I can't give the movie any praise. All right. Well, with that, we covered the first 3 Jurassic Park films. Thank you for listening. Snacks, any closing thoughts?
Boy or girl?
Boy or girl?